know. We both just ate a ton of sugar right before we did this.
So we're a little hyperactive.
We're a little bit crazy. We're a little bit insane. We watched WandaVision, then we scooped bowls full of ice cream left over from our brother's birthday, and then we came to shoot this video. So, WandaVision. It was great.
It finally came here.
Oh my gosh.
It was everything I wanted it to be. Which I didn't think I would get.
I agree. I was so happy with it. I watched it. I watched the first episode in bed this morning at 5 in the morning. And
I got up at 5 and watched them.
I know. I watched, and then I took a quick break in between to get myself together, and then I watched the second half. Oh my gosh, so good. I have literally nothing to complain about. This is the best show that I've seen since the first season of Agent Carter, and I think it's way better than the first season. It's light years beyond.
Light years better.
Any show Marvel has ever put out. This is better than Daredevil. This is better than anything they've ever put out.
This is so far the best live action superhero show I've ever seen.
Yeah, this is fantastic. There's nothing I can
Daredevil's pretty good.
Daredevil is really good. Like Daredevil is a very close second, but this is so well thought through, and because the episodes are so short, there's no crap in it. But we'll get into the details. The devil in the details. We'll get into that later. First, I just wanted to start out by saying the thing that we liked the most, and I think we both agree that the best part of this show was
Paul Bettany.
Paul Bettany was the unsung hero of this show.
He's so good.
He's beyond anything that I expected. He really came out and he pops on screen. Like, his personality overshadows Elizabeth Olsen, and that's not to say anything against Elizabeth Olsen. That's just to say Paul Bettany, there's no comparison. There's nobody else that's going to take the camera away from him.
He was completely entertaining in every one of his scenes, and he's just allowed to be ostentatious here and exciting, and and it's amazing because he was feeling uncomfortable at least being on stage.
He actually outright refused for quite some time when they said, we're going to do this in front of a live studio audience. He said, I will not do that. And finally they convinced him, yes, you are going to do that. You signed the contract. You have to do it. And so he went and did it. And I think that his nerves about it, knowing that he had nerves, they actually lent into his performance and made it better and made it more quirky and ridiculous. And I just absolutely love it.
He's like, I'm just wondering, why have they been sleeping on him as an actor? Because he did A Knight's Tale. I showed you that movie. Yeah. He hasn't been huge outside of Marvel. And it's just amazing that he's been such an underused actor. He's so good.
Yeah, and especially in comedy. I think after people see this show, he's going to start getting more and more comedy roles.
Yeah, definitely.
It was just unbelievably satisfying to watch him be ridiculous and just really embrace the absurdity that is Paul Bettany's apparent personality. So I took detailed notes, and I have a whole book here, and we're just going to go through our notes real quick because I'm short on time. And like I said, I mean, this is a single spaced whole page of notes. So let's just get started. Teresa, why don't you actually just explain real quick? This is going to be, I'm going to give the spoiler alert right here because we're going to spoiler the heck out of this thing. So if you don't want to be spoiled, now's the time to turn this thing off. Ding, ding, ding. Okay, you've had time, get out, go. So Teresa, I want you to just explain briefly what happened in the first episode without talking about references. Just explain what was the story of what happened in the first episode.
First episode, they set it up as the Dick Van Dyke I Love Lucy show, where a newlywed couple of Vision, who is a robot who can pass through walls, and Wanda, who is actually a witch, try to fit in their new home, and they have a dinner party coming. Things go kind of awry in more ways than one. It gets a little bit dark at one point.
Yes. So, and obviously, being that it's a 1950s sitcom, everything gets resolved nicely at the end and tied up in a little bow, which is the way we would expect a Dick Van Dyke or an I Love Lucy show to play out. But there are so many different references, and I'm just going to start going through them. So these are slightly out of order because I took some of them while we watched the show and I took some of them beforehand, but let's see.
Well, can I speak on the first one I see? Mm-hmm. So in the show, there's these little commercials like you would see in an old sitcom, and they're very referential to the MCU, but they seem to have deeper meanings. So there's two commercials. The first one is about a toaster made by Stark Industries, and it's a little weird because
it almost looks like a radio.
Yeah,
and it's got a little red pulsating dot.
That's beeping, and there's like this little pause where it just stops and kind of lingers on it, and it's a little awkward before it pops up. And then there's the second commercial that's Strucker watches. Like it's really funny, but it's a Strucker watch, like a really hard watch. I can't. What is it? Takes a look and keeps on ticking.
Oh, yeah, I can't remember the name.
Timex or whatever.
Timex, yeah.
Anyway, it's like that, and it's a Hydra watch, and I thought these were interesting because Strucker is the guy who gave Wanda her powers. I'm like, that's a very specific reference to Wanda and her history. Yeah. So what significance with the Stark Industries commercial, what significance does that have on her? And this might be a bit of a reach, but Wanda, one of her earliest memories is when a bomb hit her apartment and her parents were killed, and Quicksilver, her brother, saved her, and they spent about 2 days in rubble watching a bomb almost go off, and the bomb said Stark Industries on it. So I'm wondering, it's a little bit of a reach, but I'm wondering, is that a reference to the earliest moments in her life, her earliest memory there?
Potentially, yes. Now, the other thing about that radio/toaster thing that they were advertising in the first episode is that there's a pulsating red dot, and it's the only thing that's in color. Now, this is a theme throughout these 2 episodes, that there's various references to the outside world. We'll get into what those references are, but each of them are red, and they're the only things that are in color. So this is very important. But let's move on, because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're already 6 minutes in. So there's a reference at the beginning of the episode where Wanda is putting dishes away, and one of the dishes accidentally hits Vision in the head. And I actually got this from another reviewer who mentioned that when Wanda's response to that is something about Vision's indestructible head.
Good thing you have an indestructible head.
Yes, and that's supposed to be, according to the other reviewers, that's supposed to be a reference to the fact that his head gets blown up in Infinity War. Again, more spoilers, but you guys should have been gone before this point. So, you know, I don't know what to tell you. If you guys are complaining about spoilers in the comment section, you were warned.
I love how there's so much, like, there's so much double meaning in this show, because you might think, good thing you have an indestructible head might be like a silly reference of how, though,
or a throwaway
line about how he's a robot and all that, but then it has a deeper meaning behind it.
And that's one of the things that's so fantastic about this series.
It's a show within a show.
It's a show within a show, and also there was so much time and effort poured into it so that every little detail can potentially have meaning, and there's so much stuff and little things for fans to find on the inside. And it's, again, another reason why I love that the episodes were so short, especially in the beginning, because there wasn't time to add in all this crap. All you have is the good stuff that was picked over and made sure that it was the good, clean stuff. So let's talk about the biggest moment in the first episode, which is the dark moment that happens. Now, set up what happens right before the dark moment happens.
So they sit down with Vision's bosses and are trying to have a meal. It's kind of a sitcom situation. They're just trying to get this night to go well with his boss. Mm-hmm. And they start asking them, Vision's boss starts asking them questions like, where have you guys come from? How long have you been married? Specifically, why don't you have any children yet? And at that, why don't you have any children yet? Strange things start to happen. Wanda has a reaction.
Yeah, she starts seemingly getting angry, and her tone of voice changes, and she is off her game and doesn't know how to answer questions all of a sudden right after that question about why don't you guys have any children. And then Vision's boss starts to choke on his food.
After he specifically was the one nagging her on these questions.
Yeah, and so then it gets really weird, because nobody really reacts to the fact that this guy is choking, other than the guy's wife is yelling, "Stop it," as if she's yelling at her husband, but then she's turning to Wanda with a big smile on her face.
And saying, "Stop it."
Yeah.
You realize she's saying it to Wanda.
Yeah, and so what we theorize at this point is that Wanda's potentially choking this guy after he was, you know, harassing her about the question about children especially. And our theory is that there's something going on in the real world, and then there's something going on in Wanda's TV land. And so what we're seeing is the TV land, but what's really happening is potentially, my idea is that this guy might be a doctor or a psychiatrist, and that his wife is actually her nurse, and that she's getting angry with them for pushing her on on, they're pushing her buttons, and then she's having a reaction.
And it's kind of a good cop, bad cop,
yeah,
you know, kind of thing going on.
Yeah, because the nurse is like defending her and saying, give her a chance, give her a chance. And the doctor is like just continually going after her and Vision.
And he chokes, and it's really intense until Wanda says, Vision, help him. And then it's
Wanda that's controlling Vision. Everything that Vision does is something sanctioned by Wanda, which is also very interesting. You see that throughout both episodes. Everything is sanctioned by Wanda or ordered by her.
And what's really good about this is it's shot. It was shot on stage, and so it's very 50s. They could only do so much with the camera because it's on the stage. For the scene where it goes to what we would think breaking into reality a bit, it goes to regular camera work.
And again, I've watched a couple of other people review, and they were talking about how that moment was almost like a breaking of the fourth wall, how you're not in the fantasy anymore because everybody's like, oh, it's almost as if they forgot their lines or something. It's very weird. So then you have, just going back to the fact that this was shot on stage and this is referential to the Dick Van Dyke Show, there's a kind of a chair or an ottoman in the middle of the floor that Dick Van Dyke would normally trip over, and what did Vision do?
He just passed right on through it.
Which is a really nice take on it, given that Vision has superpowers and can pass through walls and pass through solid objects, and I thought that was a really cute way of dealing with that. Now let's revisit the children reference, because this comes up multiple times. This came up in the first episode, and it comes up almost as a chant in the second episode.
And it's something, I knew it was something, it just did not click in my head for some reason, maybe because I got up so early and I was tired.
Yeah.
But in the second episode, there's a talent show, and they say it's for the children. And every time they say that this talent show is being put on for the children, it's like everyone, including Wanda and Vision at multiple points, go, for the children, like some kind of chant or something.
Yeah, and it's really, really creepy and weird, and one of the reasons why I love the show is because it's not going to be just the silly, comedy and sitcom, corny and, traditional nature of a sitcom that everything gets wrapped up with a nice bow at the end. This is going to end in the exact opposite way.
Yes, and it's very creepy because we're getting into the magic elements of the MCU that we haven't gotten in before. So we got... Agnes, who is the nosy neighbor in the show, she's supposed to be a witch herself. So when everyone goes for the children, and then they have a sign up that says children underlined, it's like a big emphasis. So what I think, we know that this is leading into Wanda and Vision having their children from the comics, Billy and Tommy, Wiccan and Speed. And I think that Mephisto, who is supposedly, from what I'm hearing, is behind all this, or is partially involved in this and is orchestrating this somehow, that's part of his plan, that he wants the children for some reason.
And that actually leads into my next note about Ralph, the nosy neighbor's husband, Agnes. She references her husband, who we never see.
It's Ralph.
It's almost like Wilson from Home Improvement. How you
or Sarah from Andy Griffith's show.
Exactly. There's always a character who's referenced but never on screen, and that's kind of how her husband Ralph is portrayed. He's even said to have been in the audience in the second episode when they have the talent show, but you never see him and no one knows who he is.
Of course, remember, we see that this is being watched multiple areas from a TV. That's what all the credits are about. So he might not have necessarily been in the audience there, but he's still watching.
Yeah. So we already covered Paul Bettany and his wonderfulness. I just have to say, again, aside from Paul Bettany, the lady that they got, what's her name? Catherine Hahn, who played Agnes.
She's really good.
She's fantastic. She is meant to be in front of the camera. Like, she takes the stage and she owns it.
I feel like she was a stage actor. But
she probably was. I mean, Paul Bettany was too, but he hasn't been for quite some time, which is why he was so nervous to go back to it after having not done it. So, I already mentioned my theory about Vision's boss and the boss's wife being potentially the doctor and the nurse. We talked about Paul Bettany, the commercial couple. So there's a man and a woman who do the commercials.
Yeah. And
I wanted to ask you, how do you think they play into potentially the real world stuff?
I'm not sure, and I want to be careful that we don't, and every fan does not read too far, because I know there's a lot here, but at times I think that fans can go maybe a little too far, and that everything has a meaning. Well, we know that everyone here, based on little snippets from trailers, we know everyone is someone somewhere else that Wanda has pulled into this somehow or has fallen into this. So there are other people, but they might not be as significant as we think. Because they have I think more of the focus should be the characters we see like in the audience, like Herman, the neighbor, or people like that, or Norm.
Or Dottie.
Yeah, people we keep seeing show up. I think they should be more of our focus. And they might be sword agents, they might be... we know
they might be Hydra agents. They might be any number of characters that are either there to agitate or there to try to pull Wanda out of this this fantasy world that she's in.
Yeah.
Just going back to Agnes a little bit, she routinely is coming to Wanda's aid, whether it's with helping to
fit in.
Yeah, fit in, or helping to get the dinner prepared, or helping with her potential date with Vision for their anniversary, or even in the second episode, she's the one giving Wanda advice on how to deal with, you know, the snooty ladies of the neighborhood and kind of the hierarchy that ends up going on with women who have their territory and don't want other women to come into it and that kind of thing. And even there's a point in the second episode where Wanda is disturbed because she found a toy helicopter, which is actually in color because it's red. And Agnes comes over right at that very specific moment and pulls her out of her confusion while she's looking at this toy helicopter. And she just completely discards the helicopter. So every time Wanda gets shaken up, something happens to pull her back away from it, and it's usually Agnes doing it.
Yeah. And this was after they heard some, you know, bumps that like something was hitting the
why don't you give the summary for the second episode now?
So in the second episode, the A story in the sitcom land is about how there's going to be a talent show again for the children, and Vision and Wanda enter it to try to fit in more and to try to be a part of the kind of a part of the clubs that they're seeing. And then the other plot is that different things keep happening to make even more than the first episode with that one scene. Various things happen to shake Wanda up and to shake up this reality. And we see Vision, it's very funny. He gets gum stuck in his inner workings and he acts so funny. It was the best moment.
Yeah, I mean, both there's two scenes with Paul Bettany. One when he's trying to entertain the guests in the first episode, and the second one is when he's in the talent show and he's acting like he's drunk because he's got gum in his machine parts. And he's just such a joy to watch. And I would watch it over and over again just for Paul Bettany.
And there's so much in that scene though. So many references, like Agnes says, what did she say about her husband Ralph?
Well, what happens is Vision is drunk doing the magic show in front of everybody, and he says he's going to make his lovely wife Wanda disappear. And Agnes shouts out from the audience and says, "Are you sure you wouldn't want an audience member like my husband Ralph to disappear?"
Namely, my husband Ralph. And it's very specific and obvious place. So they're really emphasizing this.
So our theory is that the husband Ralph is Mephisto, and that's why we never see him, because he'll end up being Wilson behind. Wilson! Now we know what Wilson was! He's Mephisto! I'm never gonna watch Home Improvement again without that reference. So, and again, Agnes, her name is Agnes, but the character that people believe she is actually Agatha Harkness. And so it's a nice combination of those two names that people think was really clever. And just going back to the first episode really quick, Mrs. Hart, who is the wife of Vision's boss who comes over for dinner, she says in a really weird way that her head keeps spinning.
Yes.
And that's another thing that we're thinking ties into how Wanda's potentially choking Mr. Hart at the dinner table and potentially even making Mrs. Hart's head spin, like actually literally spin.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she's using her magical powers and all of that. So I think this is going to get really dark and really creepy really quickly.
And that's why I love this show. I love it when there's something really lighthearted and silly off-put by something really dark and sinister and creepy. I just love it. I love the end credits of this series, which I'll talk about later. We're getting
well, you can talk about the end credits
are very interesting because they do as basically a sequence going into the particles, the little pixels making up the TV and what they're creating, and then it kind of fades into something where something's destroying them, which is foreshadowing. And then it shows 2 rings at the end, and I thought they represented wedding rings when I first saw it, but I realized, oh, it's also a symbol of what Tony Stark saw when he invented time travel and the multiverse, so it's also a symbol for the multiverse.
And then you forgot at the very end, especially of the first episode, when they close out as if it's the I Love Lucy show, when I Love Lucy would have a heart cut out, and
it's a hexagon. I picked this out, representing Wanda's hex powers.
Yes. Now, there's a couple of confusing things. In the first episode, Wanda calls for Diane for help, and we're still trying to figure that out. Who is Diane and why was she calling out to her for help? Vision kind of pretends like, oh, she's calling for me. I'll be over there in a minute, Fred. You know, he tries to make it funny, but I think that reference is going to come back because it was, again, such an oddly timed and oddly placed moment, and that anything that's oddly timed and oddly placed is probably going to come back into play. But then just coming back to the second episode, there's a character that's introduced whose name is Dottie, and Agnes tells Wanda that this is the girl who basically controls Westview, and you need to get on her good side if you want to have any success here. And so Wanda, unfortunately, gets on her bad side during their little ladies meeting to get ready for this talent show.
And it gets very awkward again because Dottie doesn't even say that she doesn't really like Wanda. She accuses Wanda of being dangerous, and Wanda says, I don't mean you any harm, and that's another moment where we come back to reality.
And Dottie says, I don't believe you, and it's very, very intense, blunt and weird, as if somebody knows something more than what is being shown to us here. And then in that same scene, you have that radio show up again, and somebody is calling to Wanda,
saying, "Wanda, who's doing this to you? Or who's making you do this?"
And then there's the red pulsating dot in the radio, and then Dottie is holding a glass of something
which shatters, and her hand goes red, and there's red blood on it.
Yeah.
So all red, and this is the second instance where we had that moment of threatening back to reality that ended with a kind of a violent occurrence that snapped people out of it. That Wanda again had to fix.
Yeah, and not only did Wanda have to fix it, but Wanda may actually have been the cause of it. Wanda may have been the one who broke the glass. Wanda likely was the one who was choking Mr. Hart. And
we're seeing seeing a danger to Wanda, and it might not be something
and Wanda gets
we realize.
She gets very dark and angry and agitated when these events happen, and it
just shows that she's unstable.
Yeah, it shows she's unstable, and most of these instances occur when it has something to do with threatening the town or something having to do with the children reference, which continually comes up as we've talked about before. But there's another reference I wanted to mention that happened when they were doing the talent show. No, this wasn't even in the talent show. This was when they were having a little powwow of ladies right before the talent show. And Dottie says, the devil is in the details. And Agnes says,
and that's not the only place
he is. Yes. And
another reference to Mephisto.
Exactly. Yes. So he's definitely going to be a major character, not only in this show, but people are talking that he's probably going to be in
they're saying he's the main villain of the Doctor Strange too.
Potentially, yes. And so we've covered. Let's go back to the booming sound, because we weren't hearing the sound throughout the first episode, but in the second episode we hear it, I think, at least 3 different times, where there's like this booming sound as if there's a battle going on and somebody's, hitting something. So we hear it at the beginning when they're scared of what was outside in the dark. And then we hear it again later on. Do we hear it when she sees the helicopter, or do we hear it?
We hear it when she sees the helicopter, and we hear it at the very end of the episode where that person comes out through the manhole.
Yeah.
So we see her. I'll just go through what we see with there. We see the helicopter come through, and it has a sword symbol. Sword is basically the basically a recreation of S.H.I.E.L.D., but it's S.H.I.E.L.D. that handles multiverse and otherworldly threats. So we see that, and after that we get Monica Rambeau coming in, who is Miss Marvel, and I think that maybe she was on the helicopter that crashed, and that's how she got here. And she says she doesn't even know what she's doing here, so she's kind of lost her memories. So the final reference we get is at the very end. Wanda is finally pregnant for the children again. We keep getting that reference. They say that right before she becomes pregnant. and they hear the booming
I also like
again.
how she's like halfway through her pregnancy when she starts.
Well,
go ahead.
They go outside because they hear the booming again, and it's not a helicopter, it's someone coming up through a manhole in a beekeeper's outfit, and all of a sudden things become colorized, and Wanda says no, and all of a sudden everything rewinds back to the happy moment when she realized she was pregnant a minute ago. So that is a major reveal, not because we're just seeing people, how the booming is people trying to come in from the other side, but because we see the control Wanda has, and it makes me ask a lot of questions like, is Wanda saying no because it's not the way she thought it should go, and so she's trying to go back to where she was happy? Does she understand everything that's going on and that she's trying to keep people out? So there's a lot of, it makes me really question what Wanda's motivations and how much she actually knows herself here.
Yeah. So there's one other thing that is a great reference, and it's a tie-in. At the beginning, Vision references these unsavory characters that have been seen within the city of Westview where they live. And then at the end, we see this creepy beekeeper coming out from the manhole in the ground, or woman hole, depending on if you're in Congress and, you know, giving a prayer or something. But anyway, I digress. So I thought that was interesting that he referenced the shady characters, and then his like secondary story arc is him going to be a part of the neighborhood watch to deal with some of these shady characters. And then we see one of them at the end is this creepy beekeeper that Wanda tells no to go away, and basically rewinds and rewrites the ending of the episode. And
so the last thing we have is the suspicious mailman named Dennis.
Dennis.
And so there's this mailman, and he has a kind of like another weird moment with Agnes. And it doesn't seem like she likes him very much. And they do kind of a silly,
almost like they're fighting each other, but they're pretending to fight each other. And then as he turns away and he walks away, Agnes gives him like this weird look, like she doesn't like
they
him.
go stick him up and no, and they pretend to shoot guns at each other. Yeah,
and so that makes me think that maybe he's also one of those people from the outside that is just kind of walking past to try to get a look at what's going on with Wanda, but he's not able to get close because Agnes is there to keep him away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different interesting elements, and we've just kind of vomited it all out for you guys to see what's going on.
Next episode, we're supposed to get even more reveals.
Yeah, and then so the next episode is the 70s episode where Wanda finally has her kids, and apparently it's going to be the most quirky and silly of the episodes that we have coming up. And this was actually, Elizabeth Olsen said this was one of her favorites because she got to be so wild and crazy in this one, to the point that she said this was the only episode that the directors actually had to tell her to tone it down in. So I'm very much looking forward to this, both for Elizabeth Olsen's acting, and since Paul Bettany was so good in these first two, just think of what he's going to do in these other ones, especially after he got super comfortable. I don't know. They don't necessarily shoot these chronologically, but I just think this is going to be so fabulous of a show. I mean, 5 stars. 35 thumbs up.
35 thumbs up. Yay.
It's so good. I'm gonna go and rewatch it after shooting this while I'm editing, because I love the show, not only because I wanted to review it, but because it's escapism for Wanda, and it's escapism for us, because we've had such a long year, and we're going into a second long year, and it's nice to watch something silly and quirky that we can just kind of get away to and not think about things like politics. That's another plus. I just wanted to mention there's no reference to politics in these first 2 episodes.
Thank goodness.
That might change later on, but because we're dealing with old-timey stuff, there's less of a feeling that they need to stress, oh, let's throw a Donald Trump character in here. You know, they might do that in an 80s episode or something, but at least we got a couple episodes where we got a breather of zero politics, and I just loved that. So thank you, Marvel, for doing something right for once.
I'm going to watch every episode every week at 5 o'clock.
All right. Thank you guys for watching this episode. Please let us know what you thought of WandaVision in the comments. Which decade are you looking forward to the most? Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell to get notifications. And as I said, comment below what you thought. And I will talk to you guys on the next video.